I was never really a runner. The way I see running is a gift, especially when you have stage 4 cancer. I'm Anne. I'm running the Boston Marathon, presented by Bank of America. I run for Dana-Farber Cancer Institute to give people like me a chance to thrive in life, even with cancer.
Join Bank of America in helping Anne's cause. Give if you can at BofA.com/supportAnne. What would you like the power to do? References to charitable organizations is not an endorsement by Bank of America Corporation. Copyright 2025.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. From your morning podcast to your afternoon playlist, State Farm knows you personalize your entire day. And that's why State Farm helps you personalize your insurance with the State Farm Personal Price Plan. It offers coverage options that help protect what you care about most at an affordable price just for you. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices vary by state. Options selected by customer. Availability and eligibility may vary.
It seems like every story I see, all the numbers, every metric, everything I've seen across all the franchisors I've dealt with, one of the biggest factors of success is, are you doing what they're telling you to do? Are you learning a thing?
Right.
And are you just showing up to work? Right.
Yeah.
Like, just follow the process. If they've been successful, and the FDD the franchise disclosure document will tell you everything you need to know. Those numbers, if the federal government gets involved, those numbers have got to be right.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to the latest edition of FranCoach's Franchising 101 podcast. I am Tim Parmeter, founder and CEO of FranCoach and your podcast host. Today is one of our installments of the segment we call In Their Words. And as I've said before, this is always one of my favorite ones because in this segment, we're going to hear directly from FranCoach clients who have become franchise owners. We're going to talk about their background, what led them to consider franchise ownership, how they navigated the process with our team, as well as what franchise they chose and how it's gone so far. Now, today's guest is a little bit different in that he is actually a repeat FranCoach client. How about that? He came to us originally in 2019 looking to get out of the corporate world to work for himself, have more control. He found a franchise at that point to start, and he got it launched in early 2020. What good timing. Remember how great that year was? Despite the fact that he launched a business-to-business franchise in the middle of a pandemic, he rode through it. It's now running smoothly, up and running. He's grown this big, massive business and now ready to find his next franchise. And that brought him back to us to find number dos. But before we tell you that story, a quick reminder as always who we are. FranCoach is a national search firm dedicated to working with individuals like yourself interested in owning a franchise. We're partnered with well over 600 of the top franchisors in the country spanning 70 industries. Number one goal, as always, is to properly educate you on franchise ownership to help you determine if it's the best path. If so, we're going to help you find your absolute best match. And who knows, we might end up doing that twice like we did with this guest. So take a listen. All right, and we are back, folks, with our guest. Joining us today is not just a franchise owner, but he is a multi-brand franchise owner. Super cool. Joining us from balmy Michigan is Mr. Kevin Woodard. Kevin, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Happy to be here, Tim.
How's the temperature?
You know, it's it's zero. So I don't know if temperature even exists anymore. But it's still warm enough to go outside and run around or go ice skating.
Okay, because, well, that's good.
You know, what's a 15 below wind chill going to do if you're not out there enjoying it?
That's what made me move to Arizona 25 years ago was temperatures like that. So, but thanks for joining us, man. I appreciate it, and we've got a lot to talk about and a unique journey for you that we want to discuss, but we want to kind of go into that fun little Wayback Machine, and even like pre-pandemic. Can we remember what life was before then? But back in 2019 was the first time we talked, and you were kind of trying to transition a little bit. But talk to us about kind of your background and what even led you into franchising years ago.
Absolutely. So prior to getting involved with you looking for a franchise, I have degrees in engineering and business. And so over the 15 years prior, I had done a lot of work in marketing, advertising, branding, strategy. And I had spent 3 or 4 years working for an advertising agency in Ann Arbor, whose clientele were largely franchisors and franchisees. And I used to joke the entire time I was there that if I worked there too long, I'm going to end up buying one of these things. And I did. You get to know the people that are running them. You get to know the franchisors and, how they treat franchisees, how the franchisees think about the franchisors, and you kind of get an idea for like who is successful and who is not successful. Franchisors to go after, franchisors to avoid. And after getting comfortable with that, I'm like, I can do this. Like that guy he's doing great, but he's not anything special. I should be able to at least do as well as that guy. And so after I left that agency, I had worked for an experiential marketing company. And one of my roles there was try to grow their business. So mergers and acquisitions, finding targets, inducing them with an offer and try to get them in the door to grow their business. And after working them for a little while, I kind of got tired of making other people wealthy. So I figured it was time to see if I could do some strategic financial planning for my own self. And that was the time that I said, like, I'm gonna do this thing. So I contacted you and we started talking about the opportunity. And that was in late 2019. So, things were okay.
Right.
But by the time we had, gone through that initial round of franchisors, we'd settled on the one I ultimately went with in January. And that was when we started to hear like, there's this thing going on, people getting sick. Detroit has a very strong automotive industry here. So a lot of people are in China for lots of reasons. And they started getting sick and we had no idea what it was. So we started getting this idea that something was going on. And as we were working through the financing process and getting the franchise established, that was in February, and all of a sudden there were cases. So we got to March and the country is closing down and we're just about to open up our doors.
Yes.
And as soon as the world shut down, we got our financing. We opened our doors and looked around and went, great. Let's try to do this thing. That's how I got started.
And not just like get started with the franchise. The franchise you started back in 2020 was a business to business franchise, right? When all of a sudden businesses are shutting down. So maybe even back up and like tell us brand number one. What was it and what does that business do?
The first franchise was with System 4, which is a facility management franchise. So their targets are all commercial. So it's a B2B space. And for them, we handle everything in, on, or around a building. So outside, is it, asphalt and parking lots? Is it HVAC units on top of the building? In the building, is it repairing, toilets that won't flush, or cleaning spaces? So because of all that work, we were considered essential workers. So we were working throughout that with businesses which were still open. And a lot of our clients at that time were medical facilities, truck rental, leasing and management companies, daycare, things that were still kind of working. So we still had lots of targets, but the funniest thing is through all this stuff, everyone was wearing masks. So for after a year of having clients and seeing them at least once a month, I had never actually seen anything below their nose bridge. So I remember once the mask thing was over and you were allowed to go where you wanted with or without a mask, it's like, oh my gosh, you do have a mouth.
Right. Didn't recognize people. It's like the mask client has been unveiled. So
yes.
And I think one of the things you liked about System 4 is again, you're kind of that one-stop shop for all of those things, but a big part of it is commercial cleaning, which not only was that deemed essential back in the day, but it was we should always be, I think it was like put a newfound emphasis on things like, hey, we should probably wash our hands. Who knew that was important? And just that overall cleaning. So I'm sure that was a little scary at the time, because trying to figure out who all is still open and where those clients can be. But when you found them, there was certainly the emphasis on, hey, we understand this has to be really clean. We're going to do a great job, and then we can also do all of those other things for you, right? So
yeah,
kind of how that went.
Yep, absolutely. And one of the things that was a real challenge is no one really knew how people were getting sick, right? Like we were pretty sure that it might be in the air, so we're wearing masks. But at that time, a lot of people, like when they got back from the grocery store, they were in rubber gloves and looked like they were prepping for surgery,
right? And
they were bleaching and wiping down all the products that they brought into their house. So there's a lot of questions about how any of this was working at the time. And our clients, those that had to be in the office, and there were still a number of them, were very concerned. There was no vaccine. We had no natural immunity. So we're all afraid of getting sick because the stories we were hearing were pretty terrible.
Right.
So cleaning and daily sanitization was, very high on people's radar. And then the one nice thing about System 4 is because we handled all these other services, it gave us kind of an advantage over just the local mom and pops who were just in there cleaning. Like we had additional resources. We could also take care of other things. But one of the coolest things is we had a product called MicroShield 360, which could sanitize surfaces and keep them sanitized for up to a year. So there's another product on the market called Microban, and it would work for 2 or 3 months. There was a lot of hucksters out there selling things that did not work at all, and that hey, that was fine. But we had an actual product that actually had research behind it showing its effectivity, and that actually did the things that we were saying it was doing. So we had a product that was absolutely perfect for that scenario. We could come in, spray an office, touch all the touch points, and regardless what happened through the day, when they came in the next morning, all those touch points would be free of germs, bacteria, any sort of viral load. So in addition to the regular cleaning, we had something that was keeping people safe, which felt great from my point of view, right? Like I was doing something that was actually helping people. So that was pretty groovy.
Yeah.
So through all that, we were able to grow the business from absolutely nothing to something pretty respectable in that first year, despite the tremendous headwinds.
Right.
The business shutdowns, schools closing down, churches closing down. Like you couldn't go grocery shopping. Like it was it's pretty tough, but we were still out making house calls, or I shouldn't say house calls, we're visiting businesses and trying to get people to sign up for services.
No, super cool. I think it's one of those things when we talk about franchise ownership, and we use the letters with our team and clients, FSO, right? It's like you get all the things with the franchise and the plan, but you've got to figure stuff out as well. And being able to do that and kind of have the courage, because it probably would have been pretty easy to just like curl up in the fetal position somewhere and go, oh, this isn't going to work. Nobody wants this, the pandemic and all of the excuses that might have been borderline legit at the time. You're just like, no, let's forge on and really see that as a way to make a difference and help people out, give them that peace of mind. Because it's crazy how long it feels like forever ago now, but that was a scary time for everybody. And you're out there really helping provide a little peace of mind in an era of our existence that did not have much of it. So then you build this up and you grow and it keeps going. And at what point, or how did you kind of know it was humming along well enough to be able to kind of now look at that, adding a second brand?
That's a really good question. So like I just throughout all this from the very beginning, like people would ask like how the business is going, and it could always be going better. It doesn't matter what's happening. It could always be going better, right? And that hasn't really changed. Like for all intents and purposes, by all measures, like we're doing way better than the FDD suggested that we would. So just making it through that first year and just making sure that we were growing businesses, growing the accounts, but not just growing revenue, because there's multiple types of revenue. So the business System4's core business is recurring janitorial. So you have an office space, we're in there once a week, we're in there 3 times a week, we're in there 5 times a week. Like that's the bread and butter of the business. So the micro shield, the fixing toilets, the snow removal, the landscaping, all that stuff is above and beyond. It's great to make a couple of dollars here and there on those things, but the core business is cleaning. So sure. I was going to say the only number I'm concerned about is that, but that's not 100% true, right? But
right.
For the most part, the only number I'm really concerned about is the growth of that core business. So throughout all this, even in the beginning, where you start with a small pile of money and you want to make sure you have at least a couple pennies in the bank account, and in the very beginning, you just watch that number go down and it gets real low. And you're like, hey, if this goes south, I don't know what we're going to do next. But as long as that core business was heading in the right direction, you knew to some degree things are going to be going fine.
Right.
So, that continued to go up as long as the growth is greater than your losses in any given month, as long as that thing is steady and headed in the right direction, it gives you some confidence that things are going well. We've had some pretty good years. We haven't really gone backwards. So now we're at a point where, the numbers are in a good place. There's enough profit. The things, I'm not going to say it's running by itself because that's not quite accurate.
Right.
But, we spent those first several years getting the processes in place, getting the technology stack in places to make sure that things would be as efficient as possible. And so now we're in that place. So the revenue is a good place, the profit's in a good place, the system is working fairly well. And I've got a little bit of free time. And so it was time to look into a second venture. And that's where we are now.
Gotcha. Which I'm guessing at some point there was also the thought of like, hey, I've got some free time. Let's find something else, spend my time, build this again, build the empire, so to speak. But there had to be a little, I'm guessing, thought of like, nah, I'm good. I'm just gonna I got a pretty good existence and pretty good life and the money's good. Like to just kind of stay status quo. What was it for you that it's kind of that driver to continue to move forward and to continue to grow with something new?
Probably poor mental health. I assume that there is some level of anxiety that drives this thing, right? So you've got a pretty solid income stream, but for whatever reason, even though the chance of it just disappearing overnight is nil, it's just not going to happen. There's still this little voice in the back of your head saying, hey, I'm not spending 80 hours a week on it. So if that completely disappears, what's going to happen? So there is some of that. Hey, I just want to make sure that I've got multiple things going on. So if this one sinks, we'll still stay afloat because this thing over here is doing just fine. So that is definitely some of it. But there's definitely a large part of hey, I've got some money set aside. I've got some free time. Let's take advantage of this. Let's make hay while the sun shines.
Right.
And let's look for the next thing. And the wonderful thing is, it is as much as I thought I knew at the very beginning, much like a teenager. Once you hit 25, you realize that what you thought you knew when you're a teenager was completely wrong enough.
Right.
There's a lot of growth and learning, regardless of how much you know at the beginning, that you get through it.
Right.
And so I learned a lot of things. Figured out what was great about the System4, figured out some things that I wish we had in System4. And I used that to kind of drive the decision on what we're going to do with the second franchise opportunity.
Gotcha. Hey everyone, I wanted to take a quick break from our podcast to tell you about our amazing friends at Entrepreneur. If you're looking to become a franchisee or simply learn more about business ownership, and guys, let's be honest, you're listening to the Franchising 101 podcast, so we know you have some interest in this. And I really encourage you to go to entrepreneur.com to check out all of their great content and resources. Seriously, Entrepreneur has everything, all the way from a bookstore to the best podcasts, webinars, and videos, plus information on upcoming events and the latest articles that seriously, they cover all aspects of franchising and business ownership. If you're having trouble deciding which franchise is right for you, Start with Entrepreneur's renowned Franchise 500 ranking, which highlights the best franchises of 2022. For 45 years and counting now, Entrepreneur has been and continues to be the most widely recognized and respected authority in the franchise market. Digital and print subscriptions are available, so you never miss out on anything. So seriously, what are you waiting for? Go to entrepreneur.com right now and learn more.
Every cup of Nespresso coffee is an invitation to transform your morning routine into a ritual you can treasure each and every day. Using the Virtuo Pup, a simple touch of the button freshly brews bold aromas and a rich, velvety crema layer for delicious cafe-quality coffee at home. Whether you enjoy your coffee hot or over ice, every sip, every morning is unforgettable. Nothing tastes like Nespresso coffee. Visit Nespresso.com or our app to explore our full range of easy-to-use machines and coffees not found anywhere else.
This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was getting frustrated by your forms. Now, Taxes is uploading your forms with a snap, and a TurboTax expert will do your taxes for you. One who's backed by the latest tech, which cross-checks millions of data points for absolute accuracy, all of which makes it easy for you to get the most money back, guaranteed. Get an expert now at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees.
No, and I think it's one of the beauties of franchising is you can kind of make it whatever you want. And I think regardless of franchise, some of the happiest owners in any system aren't the top performers. They might be somewhere in the middle, but they're hitting their goals, time they spend, money they're making. But the flip side is like there's also no one stopping you from continuing to grow your system for business, as I know you're always kind of looking for that. But it's like, hey, I've got the time, I've got the ability. Let's add something else in there. So again, it's always that comes back to that control over your time, what you're doing, and the money, right? And so as we kind of like dig back into this for a second thing, it also really helped you kind of hone in on what was really important for you in brand number two, and I think probably kind of work through this pretty quickly the second time around to be able to kind of lock in on what brand number two is. So where are we sitting now? We're officially an owner of a second franchise. Talk a little bit about kind of that journey and what franchise we have now.
Absolutely. So about 3 or 4 months ago, and it just happens to always be around November. I think that's just because here in Michigan, like it gets gloomy outside, it gets cold outside, and it gets dark at 5 o'clock in the evening, and it's not light till 9 o'clock in the morning. So we all kind of huddle inside a little bit. And it's like, well, I got a little bit of free time at this time. I got to do something. And so around then, I reached out to you and another franchise coach to start getting ready for round 2. So after the first experience, and we evaluated 4 or 5 franchises, got to system 4 pretty quickly. This time it's pretty similar. Like I knew that I wanted to have something. I wanted to work with a larger, a more grown up franchise, a more established franchise that just has more systems in place. One thing about the cleaning business is you're dealing with a lot of, I guess, temp staff. Like they're not working 40 hours a week, right? So you've got lots of teams putting in 10, 20 hours a week. You're dealing with folks who were not top of their class, right? So like you're managing some people who are doing a really, really hard job. They're not making $1 million a year doing it. And if you're cleaning 5 days a week, you've got 5 opportunities to fail every single week of the year. And it could be little things. Like if you're cleaning the same space, 260 nights a year, you might forget a trash can. Right. You might forget a bathroom because you just cleaned it. But yeah, that might have been yesterday, but you feel like you just did it. You miss a Starburst hidden behind a trash can underneath a desk that hasn't been moved in 4 years. Someone notices and I get a phone call. So we do our best to do an absolute phenomenal time every time, but humans are human, right? So we're dealing with that. The marketing for B2B is a little tough. Like you're not buying TV spots. You're not putting something in the Sunday paper, right? Like you've got to get appointments. You've got to find the decision maker. It's a different approach to marketing. And there's no barriers to entry. Like anyone with a mop and a bucket can go out and start a cleaning business.
Right.
Get licensed with the state, find some insurance, start knocking on doors. It's kind of easy. It gets much harder once you get into it. There's a whole lot of things you got to take care of, but for all intents and purposes, get a mop, knock on some doors. Round 2, I wanted to have something that had a very strong marketing discipline in place. I really wanted something that was more residential in nature. I wanted to work with a company that had a lot of established processes. There was a lot of opportunities. I also wanted to make sure that the franchises we were speaking with had territories available where I lived, and I wanted them to be the premier territories.
Right.
Like if we're talking about, let's just say Wendy's or McDonald's, there's already a lot of Wendy's and McDonald's on every street corner. So the best territories are probably spoken for. So if you're going to try to get one of those franchises, you're talking about, exit 50 on the highway, which is 30 miles away from any town center. I wanted to not find, I didn't want to get into a franchise in round 2 that was like that. I want to make sure that it's a quality franchise, had a lot of processes in place, and there are cherry territories still available. So after looking at a bunch, some of them had the same seasonal worker problem. Some of them had, I didn't want to have something that had a retail location because it just, in my opinion, my point of view, it seemed like if you're going to open up a spot in the strip mall, your success is largely dependent upon that anchor store. If that anchor store leaves, or if there are not enough Starbucks around you,
right, it's
much harder to be successful. So I didn't want any of those. So how I arrived at AirServe with Neighborly is huge organization, lots of stuff baked in. There is someone you can call for pretty much everything. They're going to have a checklist. You got to check the boxes, do the steps. Everything's going to be great. It's residential. It doesn't require a retail location. And then the territories I was able to secure are perfect. It's
right.
Like the AirServe is heating and cooling. So it's HVAC. It deals with folks who have to have some level of disposable income and people who aren't going to do it themselves. And by and large, very, very few people work on their own HVAC systems, regardless of your socioeconomic status. But if you've got a client who's got a household income of $300,000 a year, they're much likely just call you, take care of it, cut the check, you go on with your life. If you're dealing with lower household incomes, the $50,000, $60,000 a year range, it's a little bit different. You got to show up, quality deal. They're still going to have you take care of it, but it's going to be way more cost sensitive, and they might try to fix it themselves before they call you.
Right.
So with this opportunity, it really hit all the things. And one real benefit of HVAC is there is licensure that's required. So the barrier to entry is quite a bit higher. You cannot just open up an HVAC business in the state of Michigan. You have to be licensed. You have to follow the rules. You can get in trouble if you break something. So while it is more difficult and challenging and all, it's also, it's a little bit protected. So the goal with this business is going to make sure that we're doing an extremely quality job, make sure the clients are happy, and making sure we're doing all the things that we got to do. So unlike System 4, where I'm relying on people going in to clean and I don't really have any control over the quality, right? I can tell you to do step 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'm going to ask for pictures. I'm going to call you and ask you if you did it. But the cleaning is quite subjective, right? I've got some cleaners that are absolutely awesome. They do a spectacular job. But even them, I'll get complaints from the clients who it doesn't smell clean, or they notice that starburst that fell behind the shelf in the storage room they haven't been in a century.
Right.
This is going to be quite a bit more cut and dried. Is the heat working? Yep. Great. Is it not? We'll come out and take care of it.
Right. No, it's good. And I think this was kind of fun to do, because I think when people look at that next thing, it's usually I want to kind of replicate something just like what I've already done. And for you, it's I've already done that. And it was almost every aspect of System 4, which you've had a great experience with, you've built this amazing business with. You're like, I want the opposite of that. And so like flashing back to an old Seinfeld episode, right, where George's going to do the opposite. And so it really had those components to it of all across the board. And not that there won't be, there's going to be challenges with every business, but I love where you're sitting. I'm really excited for you to get started, and just there may be some crossover between both of your businesses, but it's almost like your brain can be on System 4 for an hour and then flip to AirServe for the next hour and feel like you're doing two totally different things, because you're really going to be doing two totally different things, right? Like maybe the simple thing would have been, hey, we're doing commercial cleaning, let's add a residential cleaning. But you were just at that, and it's not a right or wrong, you were just at that point where like, no, I want I mean, you just walked through that, almost the exact opposite of everything with System 4, and we were able to find that. So who knows, number 3 here in a few years might be this like bizarro combination of all of those, or you'll come back and go like, no, I want retail now. And which I know kind of crossed your mind briefly this time, but it was very, it was very brief with that. And sometimes even taking a peek at something like that helps you kind of solidify, like, no, the shiny object things are cool, but you've done very, very well for yourself with an incredibly unsexy business and System 4. And same thing for AirServe coming up, because those unsexy things are typically the ones that are never going away. And as you said, people don't know how to do it themselves or don't want to do it themselves. And I think from an HVAC standpoint, even if they try to, it just delays when they're going to call you, because now they're probably going to make it worse. And so that now they're really going to need you for that. So super cool. And so I know you're going through some licensing and training now, but hoping maybe spring-ish being able to be open and launched with AirServe.
Yeah, that's what we're tracking towards. And one nice thing about the experience for the first franchise is a lot of the basic things you might not think about. Getting the LLC registered with the state and the federal level, getting the bank account, like just getting the PO box, like some really getting insurance, some really basic things. Like all that stuff is exactly the same. Did it once, rinse and repeat, do it again. After that, it's going to be quite a bit different. And I might be coming to you a couple years like, hey, I'm looking for a space tourism franchise. What do you got? But one real beauty thing about Neighborly is that they've already kind of got a plan for the next 10 years. If things go according to plan, and we say about plans once they, the first encounter with the enemy, they change immediately. But because of who Neighborly is and what they offer, I've got a plan that, if this thing does A, B, and C, then I can go on and do D, E, and F, and then it all kind of works out magically. But that's one really nice thing. And I could not have done that one without your help. And I completely appreciate it. But also without having been through the System 4 experience, it is probably not unique to System 4, probably could have been any franchise. But having gone through, learning things like how do you run a business? How do you make sure that you're taking care of your employees as well as taking care of clients, and figuring out how to change your communication with one to meet their needs, to translate that to meet the needs of the other. A lot of that stuff will still be there, but I guess the potential with a new set of franchises is pretty awesome, and I'm really looking forward to getting started. I'm a little impatient, right? Like we're just waiting for some bankers, or waiting for some car dealer, or waiting on some other people. It's like, can we just get going?
Right.
But I'm really, really excited about it. And I can't wait to get started. It's a new shiny toy. I can't wait to play with my new shiny toy.
Yeah. And you're right. And it's like, it's there, and it's still under the Christmas tree. And you're like, no, I want to be able to play with it already. And you're like, oh, no, sorry. We got to wait a little longer. And you're like, no, let's go. But no. And again, I think one of the things that kind of your journey also highlights with this is how different franchises can be behind the scenes, even sometimes when they do the exact same thing. And there's not like, it doesn't mean if one's super buttoned up and structured, that's good, bad, right, or wrong. Or if one's on the other end of the spectrum, same thing. It's finding that that niche, right? And so for you at the beginning, it was System 4, and obviously it's worked out really well for you. And again, congrats to you on the success you've had with that. And now here we're sitting here with the next one, and I'm excited to hopefully I can live long enough to make it a couple more years until you're ready to come back for the next one, and it'll be just some wild mix in between. And I know you're super busy running one big business, like waiting impatiently to get the other ones started. So thank you so much for your time. I'm going to fire one more question at you for all of our tens of listeners out there to this wonderful podcast. Somebody's out there, they're listening, they're like, geez, is this for me or not? Should I take the next step or thinking about becoming an owner? You're now a twice over franchise owner. What would be some advice you would give somebody that's maybe thinking about this?
I think you need to definitely look in the mirror, say, hey, am I responsible enough to do this thing? And I think a lot of the people are going to say, yeah, I think I can do this thing. You're going to have to commit yourself to it. But I can't emphasize enough that you have got to look at multiple. Well, you have to ask yourself, like, what do I actually want? You need to look at your bank account. You need to say, hey, what can I actually afford?
Correct.
When can I afford it? But you need to look at multiple opportunities. So when we did this the first time, and I won't name names, but you presented 3 or 4 franchises, and a couple of them were just an absolute hard pass. I'm like, there is no way on God's green earth am I going to do anything like that. That looks terrible. And we were just talking earlier today about one of those franchises and the amazing success that some people have with it. That's great. Yeah. It's awesome. You just got to find something that meets your needs and is a fit for who you are and what you want to do. And then you need to evaluate it. And once you say yes, once you start going down that path, my other big old piece of advice is what they tell you to do, the system they put in place for you, you need to follow it.
Wait, could you say that again for those in the back that weren't paying attention? So there's a system in place. You should follow it or not follow it.
It seems weird, right? Like it seems like common sense. It seems like, yep, sky is blue. Can we all agree that the sky is blue? Yep, sky is blue. But I have heard and spoke with some franchisees who buy into the franchise, and they're like, "That's all dumb. I'm gonna go do my own thing."
Right.
And if you're gonna say that's all dumb, I'm gonna go do my own thing, then you should just go ahead and do your own thing.
Correct.
But it seems like every story I see, all the numbers, every metric, everything I've seen across all the franchisors I've dealt with, one of the biggest factors of success is, are you doing what they're telling you to do? Are you learning a thing?
Right.
And are you just showing up to work? Right.
Yeah.
Like just follow the process. If they've been successful, and the franchise disclosure document will tell you everything you need to know. Those numbers, if the federal government gets involved, those numbers have got to be right. So if you do what they tell you to do, you can find yourself in that middle quartile, or that 50% pretty easily. I mean, it's just not. It's not like you give someone money and they give you a bunch of pile of money back. You got to show up. You got to put the work in. But
But it really is. It's always kind of equated to like going to college, right? Like if you just go to class and you do your homework, you're going to get a C, right? Just from effort, and you'll get C's get degrees, right? You can really be in that that yep. middle. I've got a undergrad transcript that will prove that, and so, but you really have that ability. Now, if you want to be an A student like you've been with System 4, well, that's going to take a little bit more effort, but it's like put forth the effort, follow the plan. And I think the hard part for that is almost everybody we work with that looks at this, they're smart, successful individuals. And so you realize when you become a franchise owner, you almost have to turn your brain off and be a little dumb and just like nod your head and say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. Yep. And do like back to being a child. And when, mom tells you not to touch the stove because it's hot, don't assume mama's nuts and touch the stove. Just do what the heck they tell you to do. So that may be the greatest piece of advice anybody has offered on this franchise, because nobody's going to listen to me when I say it, but you're out there super successful with this. So I greatly appreciate you coming on and joining us today, and again sharing the best advice anybody's going to need to hear when they're thinking about being a franchise owner. So Kevin, my friend, thank you so much for joining us. Keep warm. We're excited to see how you are going to be killing it with AirServe, and let's do this again here in a couple of years when we get number 3 up and running. All right.
Awesome. It's planned. And thank you so much.
You are welcome. Thanks, Kevin.
All right. Bye.
All right. Thanks again to Kevin Woodard, owner of both System 4 and AirServe, multi-unit, multi-brand. What are you waiting for, folks? Can't be a multi-unit, multi-brand unless you get started with the first one. So we are here to help you as always, FranCoach.net. And again, I hope these episodes and hearing all the different people that come on here help give you some insight to the possibilities, maybe kind of inspire you into, hey, if that person could do it, maybe I can do it as well, because you can. It's significantly more attainable than most people realize. FranCoach.net, again, never any fee for our service. Also, don't forget, every Friday, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, Biz TVs, where you're going to find our fantastic new television show, The Franchising 360 Show. So anyway, check that out. And then we've got another great guest coming in next week to chat with us a little bit more about being a franchise owner. We got a couple of our brands coming up here the next few weeks as well. So lots of guests, which means less of me, which I know everybody loves. But until next week, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you then.